The morning sky over the Galactic Academy shimmered like liquid silver as the first light of two suns rose over the training grounds. Hundreds of cadets from dozens of alien worlds stood in perfect lines. Their uniforms gleamed in the cold light, blue, red, and metallic green. At the far end, one figure stood slightly apart from them all, a human. Her name was Cadet Aria Hale. She had arrived from Earth just a week ago. The others whispered about her behind their helmets. "A human? In the Academy?" some said with disbelief. They never passed the entry trials, but Aria ignored them. Her eyes were calm, focused, and filled with a quiet fire. She had trained all her life for this moment. A deep mechanical hum echoed as the instructor appeared. He was tall and precise, his voice cold like the metal walls around them. "Welcome, cadets," he began. "Today marks your final evaluation before becoming combat officers of the Galactic Defense Fleet." His gaze swept over the crowd and stopped on Aria for a moment. "No cadet has ever passed this test," he said firmly. "Not in all recorded history." Murmurs rippled through the group. Aria's expression did not change. She simply took a slow breath, watching as robotic drones floated into the sky above them. They projected holographic maps filled with red zones and strange symbols. The instructor continued, "You will face 3 simulations. Each represents a real combat scenario. Fail once, and you are disqualified. Fail twice, you are expelled." The alien cadets straightened, their tails, fins, or wings trembling slightly with tension. Aria simply nodded. She had heard the rumors of this test long before she arrived. Some said it wasn't designed for victory at all. It was designed to break the mind. "Cadet Hale," the instructor said suddenly, "step forward." Aria stepped out of the line. Every eye turned toward her. The instructor tilted his head slightly, studying the only human in the group. "You are from Earth," he said, "the planet with no record of combat in the last 100 years. Why did you come here?" Aria met his gaze. "To learn," she said, "and to prove that humanity still belongs among the stars." The instructor's lips curved faintly. "Confidence. That will fade soon enough." He turned toward the glowing entrance of the simulator chamber. "Enter the test zone. Begin when ready." The steel doors hissed open. Aria walked forward into a corridor lit by cold blue light. Behind her, the other cadets watched silently. The doors closed, and the chamber went dark. Inside, the walls came alive with shifting holograms. A voice echoed, "Simulation 1, orbital defense." Suddenly the floor vanished beneath her feet, replaced by open space and a holographic Earth hanging below. Alarm sirens blared, red indicators flashed. She was standing on a floating command platform, surrounded by screens showing alien fleets approaching the planet. Her pulse quickened. "Begin scenario," the AI voice said. Aria grabbed the control handles in front of her. Her training flashed through her mind. Trajectory angles, fleet formations, energy core limits. One mistake, and the simulation would end. She saw the alien ships moving faster than expected. Her first instinct was to activate the defense grid, but then she noticed a pattern. Each enemy fleet moved with a delay of 2 seconds between waves. She waited. The AI shouted, "Warning! Attack in progress!" But Aria held her breath. Then at the perfect moment she fired all weapons at once. The blast lit up the blackness like a sunrise. Every enemy formation disintegrated in one strike. Silence filled the chamber. When the light faded, the voice said, "Simulation 1, completed." Outside, the instructor watched from his control desk, expression unreadable. The other cadets stared at the screen in disbelief. "That's impossible," one muttered. "Nobody clears it in under 5 minutes." Aria emerged from the chamber, her face calm. A thin line of sweat ran down her temple. The instructor stepped forward slowly. "Beginner's luck," he said quietly. "Simulation 2 begins in 10 minutes." Aria gave a small nod. "Luck has nothing to do with it," she said. He raised an eyebrow but said nothing. As she walked past him, her reflection shone in the black surface of the Academy's wall of trials. Names of failed cadets glowed faintly there. Thousands of them. Aria paused, looking at the empty space at the bottom of the board. She whispered to herself, "When this is over, I'll write my name right here." The alien cadets behind her watched her in silence, some curious, others scornful, but one thing had changed. No one was laughing anymore. The Academy's bell rang again, echoing across the courtyard. The suns climbed higher. The test was only beginning. And humanity, once mocked as the weakest race, was about to show the galaxy what it truly meant to endure. To the instructor's surprise, for the first time in years, he felt something unfamiliar. Not doubt, but curiosity, because this human cadet, this quiet girl from a forgotten planet, had already done what no one else could, and she was just getting started. The next trial was unlike anything Aria had seen before. The walls of the chamber shifted and reshaped as the lights dimmed to a dull red. The instructor's voice echoed from hidden speakers, calm and sharp at the same time. Simulation 2, Psychological Combat. Aria stood still, breathing slowly. Around her, the floor turned into a reflection of the galaxy, dark, endless, filled with swirling stars. She was standing on nothing. Then came the voice again, softer this time, not from the instructor, but from something deeper inside the system. "This is not about your strength. This is about your mind." In front of her, shapes began to form, familiar faces, memories from her past, her old Earth training camp, her father's voice, the day she left home. But the simulator was cruel. It twisted every memory. Her father's voice changed, accusing her, "You left Earth for glory, not for honor." The image of her teammates appeared, each one fading into static. Her heart pounded. She knew the rules: break focus, and the test breaks you. The AI could sense fear, hesitation, guilt. That's why most cadets failed. It wasn't physical pain that destroyed them. It was the mirror of their own mind. She whispered to herself, "This isn't real." But the voice answered back, "Then why does it hurt?" The galaxy around her cracked. Shadows rose from the fragments, whispering her name again and again. She fell to her knees for a moment, covering her ears until a sharp memory came through the noise. Her mother's voice, gentle and steady. "When you're lost, look for light." She opened her eyes. The floor shimmered again, and she saw faint lines of light running through the darkness, patterns just like the delay she noticed in the first test. The simulation wasn't chaos, it was coded rhythm, designed to confuse, but not impossible. Aria stood up. "You want me to lose control," she said quietly. "But that's the trick, isn't it? This isn't about fear, it's about direction." She reached out toward the pulsing lines, tracing one with her fingers. The light grew brighter. Then all at once, the entire illusion shattered like glass, and she was back in the cold metal chamber. The system went silent. Then the same voice said, "Simulation 2, completed." Outside, the instructor leaned forward slightly, eyes narrowing. "Impossible," he muttered again. 2 perfect runs, not a single error, not even the top alien cadets had done that. When the doors opened, Aria walked out. Her expression was calm again, though her hands trembled slightly. The alien cadets watched her closely this time, not mocking but curious. One of them, a tall, blue-scaled officer in training, stepped forward. "Human," he said, "how did you survive the mind test?" Aria looked at him and replied softly, "You can't fight the dark by shouting at it. You just find the light." The alien blinked, confused, but something about her tone silenced any laughter. The instructor walked closer. "You realize," he said slowly, "that only one test remains, and it has never been beaten. even by command officers. "I know," Aria said. "That's why I came here." He studied her again, looking for arrogance but found none. Only certainty. Later that night, the academy courtyard was quiet. The twin moons shone on the wall of trials, casting long shadows over the engraved names. Aria sat alone, still wearing her training uniform. Her body was exhausted, but her mind wouldn't rest. She looked at the board again. So many names, thousands of cadets who had tried, failed, and disappeared into the outer fleets. She touched the cold, metal surface. There was still space left near the bottom, enough for one more name. As she traced her finger across the empty spot, the door behind her opened. The instructor stepped out. His voice was softer now. "Do you know what the final test is?" "I've heard the rumors," she said. "That it's a survival mission, no weapons, no help." He nodded. "Not a rumor. You'll be dropped into a simulated war zone, one against many. Your task is not to win, but to last." "How long?" she asked. He looked at her with an expression that could almost be respect. "Until the system gives up trying to break you." Aria stood and faced him. "Then it'll be a long night." The instructor gave a rare smile, almost hidden. "You humans," he said, shaking his head, "always turning failure into a challenge." When he left, Aria turned back toward the stars. In the sky, Earth was a tiny blue dot, almost invisible. But she could still feel it, every dream, every promise. She whispered under her breath, "For you, home." The academy lights dimmed, signaling rest hours, but she didn't move. Tomorrow would decide everything. If she failed, she'd be forgotten like the others. But if she succeeded, her name would never fade from that wall. As the night deepened, the stars above seemed to watch her, and in their silent glow, even the galaxy itself waited to see what this lone human cadet would do next. The next morning came heavy and cold. The training grounds were covered in a grey mist, and the academy's bells echoed like distant thunder. Cadet Aria Hale stood in the center courtyard waiting. Around her, the other cadets watched silently. Even the air felt heavier today. Everyone knew what came next, the final test. The instructor appeared again, tall and expressionless as ever. His uniform reflected the early sunlight. "Cadet Hale," he said, his tone neutral, "you have passed 2 simulations flawlessly. But this last one is different. This test does not end until you fail. Or endure." Aria nodded. "I understand. Do you?" His metallic eyes flickered slightly. "No one ever has." A transport drone descended from above, lowering a silver pod with glowing blue seals. The instructor gestured toward it. "Enter. You will be dropped into the lowest region of the training moon. You will have no communication, no supplies, and no weapons, except what you make yourself. The environment adapts to your choices. The mission, survive." Aria took one final look at the academy, the long white towers, the watching cadets, the shining wall of names. Then she stepped into the pod. The hatch closed with a hiss, sealing her inside. Darkness filled the small chamber. The hum of energy vibrated through the metal shell as the pod detached from the docking bay. Aria gripped the seat straps tightly. "Begin simulation," she said. A voice replied, "Confirmed." Simulation 3, Endurance Protocol. The pod broke through the clouds of the moon below. A violent storm howled outside. Lightning flashed across jagged mountains of black rock. When the pod hit the surface, the impact shook her bones. The door burst open, and cold wind flooded in. Aria stepped out. The landscape was endless, a wasteland of dust, metal ruins, and shadows that moved like living things. The temperature dropped sharply. She could barely see beyond the swirling fog. The voice in her earpiece whispered, "Survive." For hours she walked, guided only by faint light from the moons above. She found no signs of life, no shelter, nothing but fragments of wrecked machines half buried in the sand. Her energy monitor blinked red, low oxygen. She tore a metal panel from one of the wrecks, shaping it into a shield against the wind. Every movement drained her strength. Then she heard it, a sound like heavy breathing. From the mist emerged a creature, huge and black, its skin made of shifting nanometal. A test drone designed for combat trials. Its red sensors locked onto her instantly. She ran. The creature's footsteps thundered behind her. She stumbled across a ridge, sliding down into a canyon filled with glowing debris. Sparks flashed as the monster fired a plasma bolt, barely missing her. She grabbed a metal rod, broken but sharp at one end. The drone lunged. She turned at the last second, driving the rod into one of its eyes. The explosion threw her backward into the dust. The machine roared, stumbling, then collapsed with a shower of sparks. Her arm burned from the impact. She sat there for a moment, breathing hard. "That's one," she whispered. The sky above shifted suddenly. A mechanical voice echoed, "Stage 2." The ground cracked open, revealing an underground city of broken towers and glowing rivers of data. The simulation had changed. It wasn't testing her body anymore. It was testing her endurance of change itself. She descended into the ruins. Strange holographic illusions flickered through the air, voices, people, memories. One of them looked like her mother again. "You can rest now," the illusion said softly. Aria shook her head. "You're not real," the hologram smiled sadly. "But the exhaustion is." She moved forward step by step. Her legs felt heavy, her throat dry. Every part of the simulation was meant to wear her down, to make her stop moving. But she refused. She found broken power cells from fallen drones, wired them together, and built a crude torch. In the darkness, she spoke aloud, not to herself, but to whoever might be listening. "You can throw storms, you can send monsters, but you can't make me quit." Outside the chamber, the instructor stood in silence, watching the live feed. His assistants exchanged nervous looks. "Sir," one of them whispered, "she's been inside for 21 hours. No cadet has ever lasted this long. Let it continue," the instructor said quietly. His voice carried something new, admiration. Inside the simulation, Aria reached a large chamber with tall glass pillars. Each pillar held a projection of every cadet who had ever failed this test. Thousands of faces, some crying, some broken, some screaming. At the end of the room, a mirror appeared. It reflected not her body, but her fears. The doubt, the exhaustion, the loneliness. The mirror spoke in her own voice, cold and cruel. "You'll fail too. You're just human." Aria's heartbeat slowed. She walked closer, staring straight into it. "Exactly," she said. "And that's why I won't stop." With one motion, she struck the mirror with her torch. The glass shattered. The entire simulation froze. A bright light filled the chamber. Then came the voice again, clear, calm, and final. "Simulation 3, complete." Silence followed. When the pod opened hours later, the morning light bathed the courtyard once more. The instructor stood waiting, his face unreadable. Aria stepped out, limping but smiling faintly. The other cadets watched in awe. None dared to speak. The instructor took a slow breath. "Cadet Hale," he said, "you have done what no one else has. 3 perfect trials." Aria looked up at the wall of trials. Then she walked to it, picked up the marker, and wrote her name on the empty space at the bottom. The metal glowed faintly as her name appeared. Aria Hale, humanity's first. The crowd fell silent. Even the wind seemed to pause. The instructor, for the first time in his career, smiled fully. And somewhere high above, among the stars, Earth finally shone a little brighter. The Academy had never felt so alive. News of Aria's success spread across every wing, every training dome, every planetary branch connected to the Galactic Defense Network. The cadets whispered her name in disbelief. Even the oldest officers in the command towers paused when her file came across their screens. Human passed all 3 trials. It didn't seem real. But while others spoke of her victory, Aria herself didn't feel victorious. She stood quietly on the observation deck, looking at the stars stretching beyond the Academy walls. The silence of space had always comforted her, but now it carried something else: expectation. The universe was watching. The instructor joined her, his footsteps echoing softly. "You should be proud, Cadet Hale," he said. "No one in history has done what you've done." Aria didn't turn. Then why do I feel like the test isn't over? He studied her for a long moment. Because it isn't, he said finally. The simulations are complete, but the Academy Council has called for a live demonstration. They don't believe in your results. Aria looked up sharply. They think I cheated? Not in those words, he said, his voice lower. But they don't understand how a human from a non-military world could outperform every species in the fleet. They demand proof. Real proof. Her jaw tightened. What kind of proof? A live combat exercise. Tomorrow at dawn, you will face the top squad from Xyrian Prime, the strongest alien cadets in the Academy. No holograms, no safety protocols. First to incapacitation wins, Aria nodded slowly. So they want to see if a human bleeds. The instructor didn't answer. He turned toward the stars. This isn't just about you anymore. The Council wants to see what Earth truly stands for. Aria looked at her reflection in the glass. Tired eyes, bruised skin, but something fierce burned inside her. Then I'll show them. The next morning came with thunder in the sky. The Academy courtyard had been transformed into an arena filled with watchers, instructors, cadets, council members from across the galaxy. The test drones hovered silently above, ready to record every second. On the far side stood the Xyrian Prime team, 5 alien cadets, towering, with silver-blue armor and glowing veins. Their leader, Commander Vex, smiled when he saw her. "You're the human," he said mockingly. "You look smaller than I expected," Aria replied calmly. "You'll see me closer soon." The crowd laughed, but her voice didn't waver. The instructor stepped forward. "This exercise will test coordination, endurance, and adaptability. The human cadet will face all 5 opponents simultaneously. Begin." A piercing sound split the air. The fight began instantly. Vex charged first, his blade glowing with plasma light. Aria ducked under his swing, sliding backward. The second alien attacked from above, wings slicing through the air. Aria rolled aside, picking up a broken staff from the ground. She spun it once, blocking a strike from behind. Sparks flew. Every move felt like instinct. Her training, her reflexes, the simulations, all merged into one rhythm. She used their size against them, turning their momentum into her weapon. When one lunged, she sidestepped and drove her elbow into its core joint. The creature stumbled. Another came from the side. She dropped, sweeping its legs. The crowd gasped. Vex roared, striking again, faster this time. His blade sliced through the air inches from her face. Aria grabbed a fallen shield, the impact throwing her back but not down. Her arms trembled. Pain ran through her shoulder. She gritted her teeth and kept moving. "You fight like a shadow," Vex growled. "No," Aria replied, panting. "I fight like human history taught me." With one last surge, she threw her shield at him. The spinning metal hit his arm, breaking his stance. She dashed forward, slamming the staff across his chest. The sound echoed like thunder. When the dust cleared, Vex lay on the ground, his armor cracked and glowing faintly. The other cadets froze. Aria stood over him, breathing hard, her uniform torn and blood on her lip. She didn't smile. She simply looked up at the council platform. "Is that proof enough?" Silence. Then slowly the instructor raised his hand. "Match complete," he said. The arena erupted. Some shouted in shock, others in awe. The councillors whispered among themselves. For the first time, the galaxy had witnessed something it couldn't explain. Raw human will, overcoming every calculation, every algorithm, every expectation. Aria looked at her trembling hands. The fight was over, but something deep inside her had changed. She realized this wasn't about winning a test anymore. It was about a message. Later in the medical bay, as she sat with her arm bandaged, the instructor entered again. "You've made history," he said quietly. "The council has ordered your name engraved in the Hall of Origin. They call you the human phenomenon." Aria smiled faintly. "It's just a name." He shook his head. "No, it's a beginning." As the sun set beyond the Academy domes, Aria stood once more before the wall of trials. Her name glowed brighter now, its letters reflecting the golden light. Beneath it, a small plaque had appeared. For humanity, for the stars. She touched the metal, whispering softly, "You said no cadet ever passed this test." But maybe it was never about passing. Maybe it was about showing that we could try. High above, the stars seemed to flicker in agreement, as if the universe itself had just written a new chapter, one where a human name burned brighter than fear, brighter than doubt, and brighter than every warning ever carved into that wall. For 3 days, the Academy could not stop talking about her. Everywhere Aria Hale went, silence followed. The once mocking whispers had turned into quiet respect. Aliens who once laughed now stepped aside when she passed. Yet Aria herself felt no pride, only a strange, restless pull, as if something unseen was waiting beyond the horizon. One evening, the instructor summoned her to the command chamber. The great hall was filled with holographic projectors showing the galaxy in motion. Dozens of colonies, fleets, and distant red zones flashing across the star map. At the center stood the Academy's High Council, their robes flowing like shadows in the blue light. "Cadet Hale," said the eldest counselor, his voice deep and deliberate. "Your performance has reached every world within the Union. You are now recognized as the first human to achieve flawless results in the galactic trials." Aria bowed her head slightly. "Thank you, Counselor," but the second member leaned forward. "And yet your results raise a question, one we cannot ignore. How can a human outperform every enhanced species without genetic modification or neural augmentation?" Aria met his gaze. "Because I trained harder. Because pain still means something to us." A ripple of murmurs spread across the hall. The counselor frowned. "Pain is primitive. Discipline matters more." "Pain is discipline," Aria replied quietly. "It teaches what comfort never can." The room fell silent. Even the instructor seemed caught between disbelief and admiration. The eldest counselor finally spoke again. "Perhaps. But there is one more step before your graduation. One that no cadet, human or alien, has ever faced." Aria tensed. "Another test," he nodded. "Not a simulation. A real mission." The instructor's head lifted sharply. "Counselor, she has just completed. This is not negotiable." The counselor interrupted. "A distress signal has been detected from the frontier moon of Laurus 9. A transport convoy vanished there 3 days ago. Communication is gone. We will send an investigation team, and we want the human cadet to lead it." The room erupted. Cadets and officers whispered in shock. "Lead it? She's still a student." One voice cried, but the counselor silenced them with a gesture. "We will see if her courage is more than simulation." Aria didn't hesitate. "I accept." The instructor looked at her, his eyes filled with warning. "This isn't an exercise, Aria. Real weapons. Real enemies." "I know," she said softly. "That's why it matters." The next morning, the transport ship Resolute left the Academy's orbit. Aria sat in the cockpit beside 2 alien specialists, a Ziran technician with 4 eyes and a silent Iranian pilot whose skin shimmered like glass. No one spoke much. The hum of the engines filled the silence. Through the viewport, stars blurred into streaks as they entered hyperspace. Aria's reflection floated against the glass, small, human, fragile. Yet her heart beat steady. When they arrived at Laurus 9, darkness covered the moon. The colony below was half destroyed, its lights dead, smoke rising into the thin atmosphere. The moment they landed, static filled their comms. "Team, stay alert," Aria ordered. Her voice was calm, clipped, exactly how the instructor had taught her. No readings on life signs. "Proceed by sector." They stepped through the wreckage. Metallic debris crunched beneath their boots. It looked like a battle. Walls melted, machines twisted, strange claw marks scorched into the ground. The Ziran technician scanned the air. "Radiation minimal. Energy signatures. Not ours." "Meaning?" Aria asked. "Meaning something else was here." They moved deeper into the ruins. Then came the sound, a low hum, mechanical yet alive. From the shadows, figures emerged. Not alien cadets, not drones, something older. Machines shaped like armor but moving with unnatural grace. Their eyes glowed white. The Iranian raised his blaster. "Unknown constructs approaching!" Hold fire, Aria said. Let's see what they want. But the machines didn't wait. One raised its arm, and a beam of plasma struck the ground beside them. The blast threw dust and light into the air. Aria shouted, "Cover positions!" The firefight began instantly. Plasma bolts lit up the ruins. Aria moved between columns, firing back, her aim precise and calm. The Zyran fell to one knee, shielding the scanner with his body. "These readings, they're not drones," he yelled. "They're training units, ancient ones, pre-Union era." Aria's heart froze. Training units? Then who reactivated them? She shouted. No one answered. She rolled across the floor, grabbed a fallen energy cell, and slammed it into her rifle. Sparks flew as she fired again. One of the machines exploded, scattering molten metal across the walls. The Aurenian pilot shouted, "We can't win this! Too many!" Aria's mind raced. She looked up. The ceiling beams were cracked, the structure unstable. She took a deep breath. "Fall back to the corridor." Now they ran. As the machines advanced, she shot at the beams above, sending the roof crashing down. The explosion echoed through the complex. Dust and fire filled the air. When it cleared, the machines were buried beneath rubble. "Silence. Status," she called. The Zyran coughed, covered in dust but alive. "We're clear. That was insane," Aria exhaled, shoulders trembling. "Insane works." They'd returned to the ship with fragments of the machines for evidence. As they lifted off, she looked down at the shattered colony. Something about it didn't feel random. It was like someone wanted the Academy to find this. When Resolute returned to the Academy, the instructor was waiting. "You disobeyed half of the engagement protocols," he said quietly, "and saved 2 lives," Aria replied. He sighed but couldn't hide the pride in his eyes. "The Council will demand answers about what happened there. They'll get them," she said, placing the data chip in his hand. "But they won't like what they see." As she turned to leave, the instructor called after her. "Cadet Hale, what did you learn out there?" She paused. "That the real test never ends. And that maybe, just maybe, the galaxy is afraid of what humans might become." Outside the viewport, Earth hung small and distant once more. But this time it didn't look fragile. It looked ready. Aria didn't know it yet, but the mission on Loris 9 had awakened something vast, something that would soon reach beyond the Academy, beyond the stars themselves. And at its center stood one human name, glowing brighter than any before, Aria Hale. The council chamber was darker than usual when Aria Hale entered. The silver floor reflected the faint blue glow of the holograms circling above, shattered fragments of the data she had brought from Loris 9. Around her, 12 counselors sat in silence. The instructor stood at the far end, hands behind his back, his face unreadable. The eldest counselor's voice filled the air. "Cadet Hale, you were ordered to retrieve information from the Loris 9 distress zone, yet you returned with something far more dangerous." Aria stood straight, her uniform still torn at the sleeve. "The machines we found weren't attackers," she said. "They were ours. Pre-Union training units, built by an ancient Terran division before the Galactic Academy even existed." Gasps echoed across the room. The instructor frowned. "Human origin? That's impossible." Earth's records before the expansion era were lost. Aria reached into her pack and placed a small cube on the table. The hologram that emerged showed an emblem, a human hand holding a burning star. Beneath it were the faded words, "Project Dauntless, Human Defense Initiative." "The machines were reactivated by a code embedded in their systems," Aria explained. "A code that responded to my biosignature." The chamber went silent. "You mean," one of the counselors whispered, "and they recognized you?" Aria nodded slowly. "Or something inside me." The counselors exchanged tense glances. The eldest leaned forward. "What exactly did you trigger, Cadet Hale?" "I don't know," she admitted. "But it wasn't just a machine protocol. It was awake. It spoke." The instructor's voice was quiet but sharp. "Spoke?" Aria looked at him. It said, "Welcome back, Human Command." The room fell into stunned silence. For the first time in the Academy's long history, the counselors seemed uncertain, afraid even. One of them stood abruptly. "Shut down all transmissions from Loris 9. If that system is still active, it could expose classified history. Humanity's militarization program was supposed to have been erased." Aria's eyes narrowed. "You knew?" The eldest sighed. "There are things buried for a reason, Cadet. Before the Union, before peace, humans created weapons that nearly tore the stars apart. We sealed that past to protect the future." Aria stepped forward. "You sealed the truth." "There's a difference." The instructor closed his eyes, as if absorbing the weight of her words. "Aria, what did the message mean?" She hesitated. "It wasn't just a greeting. It gave coordinates, deep in uncharted space. I think it's calling us back." That night she couldn't sleep. The stars outside her window seemed brighter, restless, like they were whispering secrets too old to understand. She stood at the glass, thinking of Earth, a world the galaxy had dismissed as weak and primitive. But maybe that was exactly what made it dangerous. No one feared what they had forgotten. Suddenly, her communicator lit up. A voice came through, soft, mechanical, familiar. "Cadet Hale," it said, her pulse spiked. "Who is this?" "I am Unit 0, Project Dauntless Primary Core. Your activation code awakened my network." Aria stared at the device. "You're the system from Loris 9, correct? I've remained dormant for 200 years, awaiting a human signature. You are the first. Protocol dictates transfer of command authority. I'm not a commander," she said quietly. The voice paused. "You are now." Her heart pounded. "Why me?" "Because the galaxy has forgotten what humanity was built to do," the voice replied. "To endure, to adapt, and when necessary, to lead." The signal cut off. Aria stood there in silence. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. Something vast had just been set in motion, something she couldn't control. The next morning, alarms blared through the academy. The instructor found her already awake, standing in the hangar. "You felt it too," he said. "What happened?" "Every long-range sensor lit up at once," he replied grimly. "Something's moving near the coordinates you mentioned. An entire fleet of dormant Terran ships. Automated, they've reactivated." Aria's stomach turned cold. "The Dauntless Network," he nodded. "Command wants to destroy the signal source before it spreads. They're preparing to send a strike fleet." She met his eyes. "If they destroy it, we'll lose whatever's left of humanity's original technology. And if they don't," he countered, "we could awaken weapons that make this entire academy obsolete." For a moment neither spoke. Then Aria said, "I need to go there." He frowned. "You'll never get approval." "I don't need it." She turned toward the docking bay. Her ship, the Resolute, was already being fueled. The instructor stepped in front of her. "You walk out now, you'll be branded a deserter." Aria looked at him, the man who had once told her no human would ever pass his test. "You once said the test never ends," she whispered. "Then let me finish it." He stared at her for a long time, then finally stepped aside. "Then go, Cadet Hale. But understand this, when history remembers this moment, it will either call you the savior of the Union or the spark that ended it." She nodded once. "I can live with that." Hours later, her ship broke through the nebula clouds, racing toward the coordinates. The stars stretched around her like rivers of light. And then she saw them, enormous silhouettes drifting in the dark. Old human warships asleep for centuries. Their hulls were covered in frost and time, but their engines pulsed faintly, alive again. As she approached, her console flickered. "Recognition confirmed," said the same calm voice. "Welcome, Commander Hale. Project Dauntless awaits activation." Her throat tightened. "I'm not here to start a war." "War is not our function," the voice replied. "Preservation is," she hesitated. Then slowly, she placed her hand on the command panel. The ship lights flared one by one across the fleet. Dozens. Then hundreds, illuminating the darkness. From the Academy's distant observatories, the counselors watched in stunned silence as the forgotten fleet of humanity rose again. Forming perfect formation around her vessel, Aria's voice echoed through the comms, calm and unshaken. "This is Cadet Aria Hale of Earth. Humanity has returned to the stars." The transmission spread faster than the Council could block it. Across colonies, stations, and worlds, beings of every kind paused to listen. The phrase was simple, but it carried the weight of something ancient, something inevitable. The instructor stood in the control room, watching the broadcast. He whispered to himself, almost smiling, "She did it." And far beyond the academy, the fleet of Earth, silent for over a millennium, began to move again. The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way. Because one cadet, once told she could never pass, had just rewritten destiny itself.